Before traditional Chinese medicine became a system, someone had to ask the basic questions. Why do people get sick? Why do seasons affect the body? Why do emotions change physical health? Why should a doctor care about illness before it becomes serious? More than 2,000 years ago, questions like these were gathered into one of the most important texts in Chinese medicine, the Su Wen, often translated as basic questions or plain questions. It is one of the two major parts of the Huangdi Jing, the Yellow Emperor's inner classic. The other part, the Lingshu, is more closely connected with acupuncture, channels, needling, and the movement of qi. But the Su Wen is different. It is not a book of secret formulas. It is not a list of miracle cures. It is not telling people to ignore modern medicine. The Su Wen is important because it helps shape the way Chinese medicine asks questions about the body. And its core message is surprisingly simple. The body usually starts speaking long before it starts breaking. That is the real power of the Su Wen. It does not begin with panic. It begins with observation. It asks, what has changed? What pattern is forming? What habit has repeated for too long? What rhythm has been disturbed? In modern life, people often wait until something becomes obvious before they pay attention. They wait until the pain is strong, the sleep is terrible, the digestion is broken, the stress is unbearable, or the body finally forces them to stop. The Su Wen comes from a very different way of thinking. It says that a good physician should not only care about the final stage of illness. A good physician should notice the early signs, the small changes, and the pattern forming underneath the surface. This is why the word questions matters so much. The Su Wen is built as a dialogue. The Yellow Emperor asks questions, and wise medical figures, especially Qi Bo, answer. This format is not just an old literary style, it shows the spirit of the text. Medicine begins by asking better questions. If someone is tired, why are they tired? If someone cannot sleep, what is disturbing the body's rhythm? If someone feels worse in winter, what does that say about their condition? If a person's emotions affect their appetite, breathing, pain, or energy, what relationship is being revealed? The Su Wen does not teach the reader to collect symptoms like separate pieces of information. It teaches the reader to look for connections. This is one of the biggest differences between the Su Wen and a simple treatment manual. A treatment manual asks, what do I do for this symptom? The Su Wen asks, what kind of pattern created this symptom? That difference is huge. In the Su Wen, the body is not treated like a machine made of isolated parts. It is treated like a living system. Sleep affects digestion. Food affects energy. Emotions affect physical comfort. Weather affects the body. Age changes what a person can handle. Work, rest, timing, habits, and environment all matter. The body is always responding to life. This does not mean the Su Wen is modern science. It is not. It comes from an ancient world with ancient language and ancient assumptions. But it does mean that the Su Wen was trying to solve a problem that still matters today. How do we understand the whole person, not just one symptom? To understand why this text became so important, we have to imagine the world that produced it. The Su Wen did not appear as one perfect book written by one person in one day. It came out of a long process of observation, discussion, editing, and transmission. Ancient healers watched the body closely. They observed fever, pain, appetite, sleep, breathing, sweating, digestion, pulse, emotions, aging, and recovery. At the same time, ancient thinkers were trying to understand nature, seasons, time, yin and yang, and the relationship between human beings and the world around them. The Su Wen stands at the meeting point of these two worlds. On one side, there is practical medical observation. On the other side, there is a larger way of thinking about nature and human life. That is why the Su Wen became one of the theoretical roots of traditional Chinese medicine. It helped turn scattered experience into a framework. Before a classic exists, knowledge can stay scattered. One healer knows one method. One family passes down one teaching. One region develops one practice. One specialist understands one technique. But when a classic appears, a tradition gains a center. Later doctors can study it, argue with it, explain it, challenge it, and build on it. That is what happened with the Suwen. It gave Chinese medicine a shared language. One of the most important parts of that language is the idea of pattern. The Suwen uses terms like yin and yang, cold and heat, excess and deficiency, inner and outer, movement and stillness. To many modern listeners, these words may sound strange at first. But inside the logic of the Suwen, they are ways to organize what doctors observed. Imagine two people, both saying they feel unwell. One feels hot, restless, thirsty, and agitated. Another feels cold, weak, slow, and exhausted. The surface complaint may be similar, but the underlying pattern is different. The Suwen teaches that the person in front of you matters. Their age matters, their habits matter, their season matters, their emotional life matters, their environment matters, their timing matters. This is why Chinese medicine developed such a strong emphasis on individual difference. It is not only asking, what disease is this? It is also asking, what is this person's pattern? That does not mean modern diagnosis is unimportant. Modern medicine is essential, especially for serious, urgent, infectious, or complex conditions. The Suwen should not be used for self-diagnosis, and it does not replace professional medical care. But as a historical and cultural text, it shows us how ancient Chinese medicine tried to understand the body as a whole. One of the strongest ideas in the Suwen is prevention. This is often connected with the phrase, treating illness before it becomes serious. But this idea is often misunderstood. It does not mean a doctor can magically predict every illness. It does not mean every disease can be prevented through lifestyle. It does not mean people should blame themselves for getting sick. The idea is more practical than that. It means the body often gives small signals before a problem becomes severe. Sleep changes, appetite changes, mood changes, energy changes, digestion changes. A person feels colder than usual, hotter than usual, more tense than usual, or less able to recover. The Suwen says these early changes are worth noticing. Medicine should not only begin after a crisis, it should begin with careful attention. This idea still feels relevant today because modern people are surrounded by health advice, but much of it is too loud and too simple. One person online says one tea will fix everything. Another says one supplement will change your life. Another says one routine will solve fatigue, stress, digestion, sleep, and aging all at once. The Suwen points in the opposite direction. It says health is not one trick. Health is pattern, rhythm, timing, and long-term attention. A few bad nights of sleep may not ruin the body, but months or years of poor sleep can change how a person feels. One stressful day may pass, but constant emotional pressure can shape the body's rhythm. One heavy meal may not matter much, but a repeated way of eating becomes part of the body's history. This is one of the most useful lessons we can take from the Suwen. Habits become biography inside the body. The body remembers how life is lived. Another major theme in the Suwen is rhythm. The text connects the body with the 4 seasons. Spring is associated with growth and rising movement. Summer with expansion and activity. Autumn with gathering and contraction. Winter with storage and rest. This may sound poetic, but in the ancient world, seasonal rhythm was not just poetry. It was survival. Farming, food, clothing, work, travel, rest, and temperature all depended on timing. Ancient people lived close to the land. They watched plants follow seasons, animals follow seasons, rivers change with seasons, and the weather shape daily life. So the Suwen asks a very reasonable question for its time. If the whole natural world follows rhythm, why would the human body be completely separate? Its answer is that the body is not separate. Human life participates in natural rhythm. For modern people, this does not mean we must live exactly like people in ancient China. but the basic question still matters. What happens when life loses rhythm? What happens when people sleep at random hours, work late into the night, eat without timing, ignore fatigue, push through stress, and treat the body as if it has no need for rest? The Suen would see this as a loss of order. In its view, health is not only the absence of disease. Health is order, rhythm, adaptation, and balance. The Suen also shaped how Chinese medicine talks about the organs. This is one place where modern readers often get confused. When the Suen talks about the heart, liver, spleen, lung, and kidney, it is not always speaking in the same way modern anatomy speaks. In modern medicine, an organ is a physical structure that can be studied through anatomy, imaging, pathology, and physiology. In the Suen, the organs are also functional systems. They include patterns of activity, emotion, transformation, storage, movement, breathing, circulation, growth, aging, and vitality. For example, when Chinese medicine talks about the liver, it is not only talking about the anatomical liver. It is also talking about movement, regulation, emotional flow, and the body's ability to keep things moving smoothly. When it talks about the spleen, it is not only the anatomical spleen. It is part of a larger functional idea related to digestion, transformation, and nourishment. This is why it can be misleading to force ancient Chinese medical language into modern biomedical categories word for word. The Suen belongs to a different intellectual world. It is not a modern anatomy textbook. It is an ancient system trying to map life as a whole. That difference is important. If we read the Suen as modern science, we will misunderstand it. If we dismiss it only because it is ancient, we will also miss something. The better way is to read it historically and culturally. It is a major classical text that shaped Chinese medical thought. It is not a replacement for modern medicine. It is not a self-treatment guide, but it is one of the clearest windows into how ancient Chinese thinkers understood the body. Another reason the Suen matters is that it treats emotion as part of health. Many people still speak as if emotions happen in one place and the body happens somewhere else. But real life does not feel that way. Stress can affect sleep. Grief can affect appetite. Anger can affect breathing. Fear can tighten the body. Worry can change digestion. The Suen understood emotional life as part of the medical picture. We do not have to accept every ancient explanation literally to see the insight. The text is saying that the body and emotions are not strangers. This is one reason the Suen still feels alive. It refuses to cut the person into artificial pieces. It sees thought, feeling, habit, environment, season, and body as connected. The Suen also tells us something about the ideal physician. It is not only interested in techniques, it is interested in judgment. A poor physician reacts too late. A better physician sees earlier. A shallow physician chases symptoms. A deeper physician looks for pattern. A careless physician applies the same idea to everyone. A careful physician observes difference. This is a major part of the Suen's legacy. It shaped the image of the physician as someone who listens, watches, compares, and thinks. In a world full of instant answers, that feels valuable. Real medicine requires patience. It requires humility. It requires the ability to sit with complexity. It requires knowing that the first answer is not always the true answer. This is also why the Suen cannot be reduced to a list of health tips. Its real value is not do this one thing and everything will be fine. Its real value is a way of thinking. It teaches that health is not a single object you own. Health is a relationship you maintain. It is a relationship with sleep, food, work, rest, emotion, time, age, and environment. Sometimes medicine must act quickly. Sometimes urgent treatment is necessary. Sometimes modern diagnosis and intervention are the difference between life and death. The Suen does not remove that reality, but the Suen reminds us that not all health problems begin as emergencies. Many begin as quiet patterns. That is why one of the deepest questions in the Suen is this: when does illness really begin? Does it begin only when there is a diagnosis? Does it begin only when pain becomes unbearable? Does it begin only when a test result changes? Or does it begin earlier, in small signals that are easy to ignore? The Suen suggests that the body often speaks quietly before it speaks loudly. A person may not be obviously sick, but something may already be shifting. Sleep becomes unstable. Digestion becomes weaker. Emotions become harder to regulate. Energy no longer returns as quickly. The body may be asking for attention before it reaches the point of crisis. This is not a reason to become anxious about every small sensation. That would not be wisdom. The point is awareness, not fear. The Suen teaches a disciplined way of noticing. Observe without panic. Recognize patterns without jumping to conclusions. Respect the complexity of the body. That is a much more mature message than the simple health advice we often see online. The Suen is not saying, here is one secret. It is saying, learn how to pay attention. That is why the title Basic Questions is so powerful. Basic does not mean easy. Basic means foundational. The questions in the Suen are basic because everything else depends on them. If you ask the wrong question, you may chase the wrong answer. If you only ask how to remove a symptom, you may miss the pattern that created it. If you only look at one part, you may miss the relationship that shapes the whole. If you only react after the crisis, you may miss the quiet warning that came earlier. The Suen's genius is not that it gives one perfect answer to every medical problem. Its genius is that it teaches a way of paying attention. In the end, the Suen is not just one part of the Huangdi Neijing. It is one of the clearest expressions of Chinese medicine's deeper mind. It sees the body as connected. It sees health as rhythm. It sees illness as pattern. It sees prevention as wisdom. It sees the physician not only as someone who treats, but as someone who understands. And if this ancient text can leave us with one lesson today, it might be this: before the body breaks, it whispers. The work of medicine begins when someone learns how to listen.